If you're in therapy, they start looking at you, guys, you have issues.
Actually, I do a mental.
That one, oh my God.
I'm like, mental health. I do a mental. I'm like,
The people
God.
of mental.
It's like, no.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Majuu Diaries. My name is Raimo.
And my name is Njeri. Karibuni sana for our new Majuu Mates. Welcome, welcome. And for those who are new here, this is Majuu Diaries, where we do life huku Majuu. We are Kenyans in America doing life and figuring things out, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as you can see again today, we have a guest. And this is our lovely doctor. Tuwaleta daktari. You guys, we know people. This is Dr. Priscilla or Dr. Pili Pili.
Pili. The students I teach call me Professor P.
What? Professor.
Yeah.
Hey.
Tuna chomp.
Bobo, Baba.
That's how I'm saving my phone.
Yes, it's Kapili.
No, I promise you the day I met her, she told me Pili Pili.
Okay, well, Dad calls me Pili Pili.
Okay.
But it is Kapili.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes.
She's
Ongeza Pili Pili.
Professor. Tutamuita Professor P. But yes, today we are talking about mental health within the Black community, especially our Kenyan communities, because we are very notorious to taking everything to the Lord and doing nothing else. Yes?
Tell them.
Hiya, Priscilla.
Yes.
Professor P. In fact, I'll update your name on my phone.
Maybe she should just give her
Yes.
her own introduction first.
Yes.
So, as you've heard, I'm Professor P, but my name is Priscilla Washira. I've lived in the States for too long, actually. I think 97, let's put that. You do the math, right? But I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and I'm here to just advocate and give tips on mental health as best as I can. Yes.
Amen.
Sikia hiyo sauti ni very professional, very calm. Hey. That's what you need.
Wait, the Nahururu accent will come out as well. Just wait. Watu wa Nahururu, shout out.
Yeah, so I mean, again, as Njeri has said, we're talking about mental health within the Black community, and again, this is the last episode of the month because we've been talking about Black History Month. So we really wanted to talk about the issues within the Black community because it's Black History Month. So today, the reason why we brought Priscilla here is because I know mental health is one of something very, very big for her, and also being a licensed counselor. We wanted to bring you an expert so we can deep dive into this conversation. So maybe my first question for our viewers is just to really demystify the difference between mental health and mental illness. Because I feel like people get it twisted.
Get it confused, yes. So mental illness, of course, the second word illness is showcasing that there's something biologically that's going on within the body. Now you may ask, how do you understand that? Well, it's through tests, and that's why we thank God for psychiatrists, right? And psychologists as well, who are able to run these tests, whether it's through questionnaires or just simply observing behavior to know, okay, now we're dealing with something that is more biological. And that's where you have people who may need to be medicated, and that itself is a stigma. Because again, like you said, okay, if God can heal my body, why do I have to be on these types of medications? I'll dive into that later, but that is a difference between the mental illness aspect. And then you have mental health, which is, we're humans, we're wired for connection. God made us to love, to cry, to feel all these emotions, but some people may not know how to name these emotions. And that's where mental health comes in. It's the umbrella of the mental illness, the naming the various emotions that can trigger us negatively, leading to our mental health being disturbed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't Okay, I didn't know all that.
We're all learning.
Loading.
We are all learning.
We are all learning.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. There's a lot of layers to that. But just to summarize, is mental illness would be, let's say somebody has been diagnosed with bipolar, right? And they can do things holistically, which is without medication, to try and cope with bipolar. But then they realize that it's now either a hormonal form of imbalance, or there's something biologically going on, whether it's neurological, which is your mind, that something holistically is not going to help. So now they have to add another feature, which is now medication. And so that will stabilize the brain, stabilize the behavior.
Gotcha.
So then that's when you talk about mental illness, because it's something that's being treated.
Gotcha. And let me ask you, is mental illness that's something that could be hereditary from parents or grandparents?
Yeah. And that's why it's important when you go to family doctors and family visits to know your family history. It's very important because it's beyond just a breast health exam or a pelvic exam. It's saying, you know, my mother was diagnosed with bipolar. My mother was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, because genetics plays a big role into the biological makeup of that person, you know, neurologically as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. No, maybe drawing on that, like, it's maybe, is it one of those things you see like a family, maybe a Kenyan family or back home in Shags, where there's no much knowledge, where you see like the father was behaving a certain way, or he had that mental illness, and then you kind of see it in the kids. But then because we don't have that knowledge, we just say, no, those ones are cast or something, like, you know, or something like that. But it's something biological being passed down from the generations, and something that actually needs medical attention. So, man, that's good to know. Like, if you see that pattern in your family,
it's good to be able to highlight it. And again, like you said, the stigma aspect is mental health advocates, everybody who is passionate, whether it's health, whether it's financial health, is putting language to that topic. And so us as counselors, we're trained to do that. But in the community, you can be a mental health advocate. And that is, you know, being studious enough to just learn, even if it's a basics, but to just say, I can give people language on how to take charge of their health.
That's good. That's really good. Did you want to go? Or?
Yeah, no, I've remembered my question. So I know there's a stigma against about mental health and being treated, or let me say specifically for mental illness. Why do you think it's easier to treat a cold, where you can see kimira and someone is coughing, and then you see somebody who has bipolar, and again there's still the signs and symptoms, but we're just like, simezi yo dawa.
That's a very good question. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Brene Brown, I'm just going to gloss over something that she says, and vulnerability is our greatest measure of courage. And like you said, when you're not able to see something and connect it, as humans, we're wired again for connection. So if I can't see something that connects A and B and C, my mind is wired to just put whatever it is to fill the gaps. And so sometimes that can be daunting for people. And that's why, again, I keep saying putting language to things. And so if I don't know that this person is acting weird, it's easier for me to say, they're crazy in the head.
They're different.
Because I don't know how to put the puzzle pieces together to say they're not crazy in the head. They have this and this, and this is actually showcasing to me depression. Putting language to what you see.
Oh, wow. That is so good. That is really so good. Going into, I think I'd mentioned something about the Kenyan community.
Right.
What are some, you know, especially here in America, we've seen a lot of, you know, not good end results of people who have struggled with mental health, or even some people who have, you know, diagnosed mental illness. What are some of the things that you can see are really creating pressure or causing stress on, you know, kind of just the mental health aspect of people, Kenyans in America in general? Yeah,
so to touch on, it's sad, just the stories I'm sure we've all read lately of people being found places, and you're like, okay, they died by suicide, right? And what I would say, the theme that I've seen, at least when I look at it from a counselor lens, a clinical lens, is, and you may get tired of, if you leave this podcast to saying, put language to things, that is key, is these people that were going through things did not have community to give them language or to even give them the support that they needed, or they did, but it was too messy, to go back to what you were saying.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how to figure this out by myself. So you've told me depression, you've told me mental health. Their mind is going through this almost just like tornado, this whirlwind. So the situations could vary, but I would say in our Kenyan community here in the Dallas or DFW or the United States, I would say it's important to create spaces that are safe. And when you put safe, and I'm going to say this, and Kenyan, that's an oxymoron. I said it.
It is. It really is.
Because I can come to you or you, let's just say, and I pour my heart out, and then we leave, and it's like, we're going to shida. Or, my goodness.
Good, spreading it.
Yes, and somehow it comes back to you. So, whereas you went somewhere to get empowered to find a safe space, that safe space is not safe. So you go seeking and seeking and seeking, and it goes back to just this whirlwind, and it's not justifying the act, but some people are left with that final result. If I can't find a safe space, then there's no space for me here at all. And then they choose to commit suicide and die by suicide, and it's just sad that that's the ultimatum that unfortunately some people in, well, speaking for the Kenyan community, encounter.
Why do you think the Kenyan community cannot, let me not say cannot, doesn't provide that safe space for people coming to Majuu or people already residing in Majuu? Like, why do you think that's, like you said, it's an oxymoron? Why is that? And especially being in a country where we are a minority, not just Black, but also African, let me say Kenyans in America, like we're double minority. Like, you would think we would have more of a unity front and like, come over, we got this together, we're doing this American dream, driving our Hummers.
Well, I think it's, number one, let's talk about culture that's passed out. So if our parents, again, were ridiculed for expressing themselves or showcasing any form of emotion, culture gets passed around, and there's this feeling of emotions are they're only welcome at funerals. How sad. They're only welcome at maombolezi. Sad. You know, we cannot categorize when emotions are appropriate in the Kenyan community. Weddings, graduations, bridal showers. You know, if you look at it, I'm a cultural researcher. That is what takes place. And so outside of those, it's almost like we're going to create spaces for you to be emotional. So whenever you remove somebody from that space and they're just doing life, it's why are you being weird, or why are you making this uncomfortable? So as people, it starts with just, even it's one person that builds into a community, and we change that narrative to say that we cannot be mental health advocates, I'm going to say it again, only when there's a maombolezi. We cannot just be mental health advocates when someone died by suicide and we're ready to champion and bring people together. If we're going to put that energy out, it has to be consistent. What do the kids say? We have to match the energy. And so that means 365 mental health advocates throughout the year, all day, every day. And not just, let's say, when somebody bears their heart out, even at the altar. Let's bring church into this as well. Or when somebody gives their life back to God and they were an addict, and now it's like, yes, it's so good that you were being this vulnerable. They should be welcome to do that even when it's not a Sunday service.
That's true. Wow.
I'm hitting hot topics.
I know.
Y'all gonna get shut down.
You know, you mentioned something that's a hard topic here, because one of the safe spaces that you could expect to find a safe space is in the church.
Right.
But unfortunately, a lot of people have not found that as a safe space. So there's a lot of people in the church that are dealing with a lot of mental health issues, but you know, it's not a safe space for them to exist or talk about or have that community.
Right.
Can you touch on what are we doing wrong as a church when we should be a safe haven, but then the church is actually being the opposite of that? It's actually pushing people away.
Judgmental.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, with people being super judgmental. Like, I can't, like, how are you saved and you have depression? Don't you know Jesus?
Exactly. He's
You
your
know?
peace.
Yeah?
He's your joy.
He's your
The joy of the
he's
Lord is your
everything.
strength.
Exactly.
Right.
Eh, why do you profess that but you're still
Goodness.
having issues?
Exactly.
He has not given you a what is
You
it?
don't have breath in your lungs?
Yeah.
Well, I do, to be able to say that I need help.
You know, let's talk about that.
So, one thing I like to do, and that's just me personally, but I think we're saying the same thing, is look at Jesus through the lens of he was human. Let's just
That's
build
right.
that foundation. And throughout the Bible, we see the man retreated a lot. I mean, a lot. And if you think about it, I would dare say that although he was God in the flesh, that humanness of him, he had to retreat, because if you are dealing with people that are contending against you, but you've been called to save them, I would need to retreat to get my mind right. Because then I'm going to rebel, or I'm going to operate outside of the calling
They'll
that I've
join
been
you.
given. Right? If
Yeah.
I'm your so to lay that foundation, the church needs to go back and reflect, who are we calling people to follow? And the Bible describes him as a man acquainted with many sorrows, which highlights that he felt. And so to condemn somebody for being human and the person that God created them to be, you know, God factored in our humanity when he made us. And so it is so demeaning to tell somebody that you can only pick and choose your emotions in this space. You're literally building boxes for them to be vulnerable. And then chastising them when they're coming to the place that they know to be safe. So as the church, we have to be the hospital. We literally have to, not just in word or in deed on Sundays, right? When, you know, we're ushering people in, we're hugging them. But it needs to be even after, when the lights are turned off, when somebody can call the pastor and say, I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
And instead of meeting them with, I talk about this in my book, Seated My Journey to Becoming, where it's, you know, toxic Christianity of, I'm dealing with this. Well, you know, God loves you. I know that, which is why I'm coming to you. Because you've given me the tools to do so. I know he loves me so much, so I'm coming to the man of God to seek this spiritual help out, but also practically.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say you can have Jesus in therapy too.
Absolutely. Say that again.
You can have
double
Jesus
click on that.
and therapy too, because for me, when I sit down with someone, I have made it very clear to say, I don't tap into my counseling knowledge, I tap into the great counselor. If that's what the Bible describes him as, it just goes to show that he is willing to sit in our mess. You know, my dad always says he's willing to sit in that boat with us, right? When the winds and the waves are moving, and say, you know what, this is messy right now, but I'm gonna sit here till we figure it out. So the church has to be willing to display what Jesus came to do. Right? Is to usher the brokenhearted, to usher those that are downcast. And I think to me that's a heavy revelation of, please let us not like demean and put people down, because it's another thing that's sad is you hear youth that die by suicide and you ask, who did they reach out to? And it's the church. Embarrassed. Honestly, because I'm not saying if we heard a psychiatric center or a hospital would not be bad, but the church. Just let that sink in.
Yeah. But okay, I want to deep dive into that a little bit. Sorry. So this youth person, and it's unfortunate that we've had these stories so often. Maybe the question is the church now the right place to go? Because the people that you're going to talk to, are they equipped enough to deal with that? Because I know it gets to a, maybe I'm trying to see it from, because I've had people say, for example, somebody going through a lot, and there are people who are going through a lot, and they will need to be on the phone with you several times in a week or frequently, you know. who are they supposed to be going to in the church that can invest in them, and they have the right tools and resources to invest in them, to give them the amount of time that they require? Because
it's a lot of energy.
It is, because there's what's called, I don't know what's the name, but like you get fatigue from trying to help somebody.
Emotional fatigue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are we really equipped, or are we messing up where maybe somebody, a youth, comes to me, they think I have the answers for them, but I'm not equipped because I'm busy, I got so much going, sometimes I don't pick up a call, and maybe that call is the most vital call that would have changed your life. Like, where are they supposed to go to for the help in the church?
You know, I am an advocate of having counselors in the church, and some people watching may say, great, we have them. No. I would say refer out to a company.
Okay.
Because you don't want the familiarity of, I think having an advocate, somebody who can refer in the church and say, oh, these counselors outside are going to be here, and you connect them. Have somebody who is a safe space that can be a bridge.
Okay.
But if it means having doing consultations, having an outside agency that has counselors that are Christian, would help for the church to be able to utilize. Because what that does is, number one, it really highlights the safe space.
Yeah.
But it also creates a disconnect that is healthy. Boundaries are good. And in the church, some people may say, you don't need boundaries in church. You do. You do.
Listen.
Especially when it comes, like you said, to people's vulnerability. There's a space and time for that, for when the pastoral team can handle that vulnerability and so forth.
Yeah.
But when it goes beyond that, having that counselor advocate, or maybe it's a community. Let's say there's sister churches, it's a board, and they, okay, these are the counselors, and these are the agencies.
Okay.
That the church can use, and now these are the people that connect you to them. That's fine,
that.
because then it wouldn't cause the emotional. Now it may, but it would be different because it's like, oh, we're getting a lot of calls, but I don't have to carry that.
Yeah.
You know, I can hear a little bit of what you have and say, you know, maybe check out this group of counselors that are on the list. If you're dealing with, you want to split them up into topics.
Yeah.
So if it's, let's just be honest, sex addiction, or if it's drug addiction, or if it's teen or moms or parents, having counselors that can sit on that, then everybody carries the weight equally. And we call that access, navigation teams. You see that in hospitals, you see that in schools, because again, it goes to where not everybody is emotionally exhausted.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard
Professor
that.
Pugh,
I'll tell you what, but I really think this is something that, I know we're recording, but the DFW pastors, you know, championing that and saying, how do we get these people on a counseling board?
That's good.
Then they tell their members, right? And each counselor maybe can handle somebody. And like if it's teens, say for example, okay, I can refer you out. These are the people.
That would be so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because especially our youth, and so sorry to dwell on this topic, but I'm seeing such a big, because majority of the people we are losing to suicide are our young
adults,
people.
yeah.
And the base of the foundation of that is these are people who are being raised in Kenyan homes but are living in an American society. And there's a big disparity right there between how their parents are trying to bring them up and what their peers are doing and all that stuff. So there's a big disconnect between kids and their parents. There's no understanding, you know, like their parents want to parent them the way their parents parented them. And they're like, nah, bruh.
Do you know what I deal with?
You know?
When I'm in basically day camp school for 8 hours of my day.
Exactly. And I feel like one of the gaps that really need to be filled is someone to bridge the gap between our Kenyan parents and their Kenyan American children. Because I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. And I get a lot of calls with that, and everybody's like, when are you launching this thing? And I'm like, it takes time because I want to do it well.
Okay.
And, you know, right now it's me and Dr. Bore, so we're like, oh God. But being that bridge is key.
Yeah.
You know, and I also think having a team of mental health advocates, which I think your husband's on one of the groups, to be able to say, okay, this is how we can do this. Is it conference building? Is it workshops that we do? You know, but it is important.
It is. Now, you mentioned sorry to really toot his horn, but the fact that he was raised in that setting, and his life went the way it did. I feel like he always has very good grasp. Like whenever he
can get
talks to
it.
youth, like, okay, I've been where you are.
Yeah.
I've been brought up by strict parents, but this is what you really need to understand.
Yeah.
But also having that conversation now with the parents as well. Like,
Exactly.
yo.
Like this is what is. You know, it's funny you said. I don't know if he's ever told you this, but I remember we would go to. Our parents would do workshops, and him and I would just be sitting outside, and you're just like, you know, he never wanted to talk. He was like, "Hey," it's like, "Hi," but you see that strict upbringing, and you're seeing your parents pour into these people, and you're just like, I see it, I live it, and I'm seeing what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think what I like to tell parents. Oh, okay. Well, it's part of the interview. Okay, I was about to say, we're still
It's
recording.
yeah.
What I like to tell parents is you're going to have to meet them 50-50. And you are going to have to ask questions that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
What are you learning? What's the new music? What is dating looking like nowadays? And I always tell parents, be ready to clutch your pearls.
Because they're going to tell things.
Because, you know, and just take deep breaths. But the kids are willing to tell their parents.
They are.
You know, we had a young man who, it's public knowledge because it's on Facebook Live, but he literally stood up in front of the congregation and said, I was battling lust. And I had to have a revelation of what Christ did for me, and I'm still dealing with it. It's a day-by-day process, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
These are the real conversations that we need.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think it's also good for men of God to say, you're not the only one. To normalize it and say, this is a biological feeling. It's a desire God wired in us. That's what my dad says. It's a desire God wired it in us, but the way you display it is what can be dishonoring to God.
Yeah.
So you can't shun the desire. It's how it's done. And so I think even when we're talking about mental health is this is something that's going to happen. I'm a human.
Yeah.
And so when you condemn me for being a human, that's what's wrong. You know, and I think the foundation of all of this is we should be careful to not invalidate people's feelings. As odd as it may sound, maybe somebody's honestly crying because their coffee spilled. As a counselor, I've learned it's deeper than that.
I really need to learn.
It's deeper than that. Because you're like, is it really the coffee? And then you're like, no. Because the other day, I don't know, somebody looked at me the wrong way and it made me feel insecure. Then I started thinking about, and it's just your thoughts
it built
go.
up, and then when the coffee
the coffee spill is just the tip of the iceberg.
And that's where people are like, alarm? Like, what? But you really realize how much we suppress. And that's another topic too, is how do these emotional outbursts come out?
Me, I've had them. Kwanza, let me just be vulnerable. Last week, I had a breakdown, a proper breakdown.
Yeah.
I was in the process of moving. Work was a lot, and I was on my period, so it was a lot.
Wow.
I just sat down. My friend called me, and actually Amani, you guys know Amani. She called me. We usually have our Monday phone calls, and she's like, "Hey girl, how you doing?" And that just triggered me. I cried. I was like, "I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't know why." And she's like, "What?" Me, I was just calling to say hi. It was our usual Monday call.
Right.
But I cried. I crewed. I cried and I cried.
You needed it.
Wow.
And it's just stuff bottled up. And I mean, you guys know I'm very vocal about it. I do therapy, but just last week was just so much.
Right.
My brain could not handle it. It could not.
The math was just
my
not.
God.
The math was not mathing. But then I cried and I was good. I slept. I woke up. I was like, oh, I was just having an off day.
What is that? What is it when the people say the meme, you burned 4 houses and you're like, oh, that was just it. I just needed a good cry. Hey,
Good cry.
no, let's talk about the damage too. Please.
You have insurance.
people are still loading. Like this lady just came and did this, but it goes to touch on that suppression, and that's just another emotional term, language. Suppression is when you're pressing down emotions, and at some point they will come forth, and that's what we now call triggers. Nowadays, triggering is so misused. I'm like, that's not a trigger.
Please tell us, because I specifically myself want to understand that's
What is a trigger? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I can see the context of when people are saying you're triggering me. But a trigger really is when, for example, let's say I leave right now and I go interact with somebody and I leave, I don't like them. And you're just like, well, they did nothing. You had a great conversation. No, there's just something about them. Well, when you really dig deep, or you go through therapy, or somebody talks it through with you, you realize this person represented your father. And your father, you probably didn't have a good relationship with him. That's a trigger. Because this person was bringing up unresolved conflict. Okay. So anytime you realize I have some conflict that's unresolved and it's causing like static, let's put it that way, triggering. That's where therapy comes in, you know? That's where having a conversation comes in, so that you can find ways to, let's resolve this because it wasn't. And also dealing with family issues is key. To be able to say if healing from family wounds is key, let me correct that. And for some it may be hard. You may be wondering, Priscilla, I have a folder full. It's okay to start.
You
know,
you gotta start somewhere.
And we talk about this. I'm very open with my family, and having an honest conversation of when I started going back to get my PhD, my dad was like, do you want to do this? And why he asked me that was, for the longest time, I had my own unresolved conflict because I thought that I needed to do this. So I'm putting pressure on myself because of unresolved conflict. And sometimes it can be one-sided. Maybe it's just you and the other person's just like, I'm just trying to encourage you, but that's still a trigger.
It's still a trigger. Oof.
You see? So him asking that, and you want friends and people that can be like, are you sure you want to do this? Because they're consciously aware that this was a trigger in the past, but now you've healed so that you don't re-trigger yourself.
That's a blessing that you can have those conversations with your family and, you know, people understand.
Right.
But it takes a lot of work on everybody's part.
Very much so.
How, I don't know if you can answer this, but how has your family gotten to that point to have those conversations without people getting, let me not use the word triggered, but like offended or misunderstanding, where you're like, you know what, this is a problem for me. I just wanted to let you know. Where do we go from there? Let's figure it out.
I think setting the foundation, my father's good at, I would never acknowledge it because I was like, nah. But I was like, no, he's making sense. He was always like, it's okay to not be okay. And I know we hear that a lot. But that's one way that we have honest conversations to say, you know, he always says, I'm not Jesus. Like, I'm not always going to be, yay, you know, so it's okay to share how I failed, or you believe, because it's your belief system, how you believe I failed. And him being receptive, you know, reception is key. Because that's how vulnerability can thrive. You know, to be able to even sit here and share that. If I felt y'all were closed off, then I'm going to close off. But the fact that the conversation can flow, and it's like, no, continue. This is safe. No judgment, right? Judgment cannot be there. Dr. Brene Brown says when judgment is there, you know, shame flourishes. But when judgment is removed, shame cannot flourish. Like, you can't have shame and non-judgment at the same time.
Hey, boo.
You know, so that's why, again, we're bringing scripture. There's now no condemnation. Like, judgment has to leave. And so that's the foundation of how we've been able to have those honest conversations, is to just say, all right, everybody, take your, we all do it. Take your judgment cap off. We all just
a great way to
we
start
literally all kind of do it because it centers you. And then we pray. Again, we invite God into that, the Holy Spirit, to bring revelation that we might not be able to. And then we just talk. But it's not like a 5-minute conversation. When you're dealing with tough conversations, there's a lot to unravel. And as counselors, we call it the ball of yarn. And so we're going to unravel it slowly, you know, because it takes a minute to get to that simple strand.
You mentioned a word that is reception. How you receive? Oh my God.
Reception.
How to receive something like that without feeling like you're being attacked. That is something I need to go back to therapy because
therapy is cool. It is. And I think on both ends to active listening as well, because if to be receptive, you have to be an active listener, and it's difficult for all of us to try and do, because you're zoning out and you're like, oh, keywords, you know, but active listening is also reflecting, you know, oh wow, you know, my remote, that was really brave of you to share. That urges a person to keep going. Wow, thank you so much for inviting me into that space. I did not know you go to therapy. That's awesome. I do. You know, the person feels encouraged to keep going. And
Okay, wow. Okay. Since we're on therapy, yeah? What should an individual, what are they, do you call us patients or?
clients, I like clients.
Clients. What should a client expect when they go for therapy?
Keep an open mind. Might hear that in many spaces, but what I mean is the therapist sitting in front of you, it depends on what their guiding theory is. My theory is very cognitive, so the theories are split up into existential. It's more of your humanistic way of being. And then there's a cognitive therapist who are more in your mind. We want to deal with the mind because the mind is what drives behavior.
That's true.
So for me, I use REBT, which is rational emotive behavior therapy. And a lot of therapists, I don't know, I've heard they don't like to use it because it's very direct. And in counseling, it's like, why are you being direct? But I believe that you have to do this form of Socratic reasoning, philosophical reasoning, asking why. Why did you think that? What led you to that? Because it urges a person to think deeper. And then you get to realize, oh, this emotion caused me to behave this way, and now my behavior caused a consequence because of my emotion.
That's right.
Right? So when you rewind the tape back, it was all caused by a belief system. This belief system taught me to believe I'm flawed. Because I'm flawed, then I'm going to feel sad. Because I'm sad, I'm going to do things that sad people do, whether it's just not waking up, not interacting. That leads to a consequence of people just leave your life because you don't show up anymore. What happened? So that's a way to kind of show you how, you know, that's a form of theory I use. But to be open, because you don't know what theory your counselor uses. And so those are some things that you can Google yourself and read on. Maybe when you find something that works with you, then you can say, oh, I want to know, do you operate in this theory? I like it. So educating yourself as well in terms of what does client confidentiality mean? To be able to ask these questions, because at the end of the day, the client's welfare is our responsibility. That's our key responsibility. It's not about getting the money. It's not about getting that aha moment. It's, do you feel safe? Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard?
Sorry, just another question on that. If you know somebody needs therapy and this person knows that they need therapy, but they haven't taken the time to look for a therapist, and they tell you they need therapy, is that something you can help? Okay, let me speak for myself. So my friend, she needs therapy. She tells me she needs therapy. I know she needs therapy, but she's done nothing. Can I go out of my way and send her some suggestions like, hey, these are some cool therapists, or is it one of those situations of you can take the cow to the river, but you can't force the cow to drink the river water?
Yeah, it has to be their choice. And I think you can empower people, but I've learned that it's scary to be seen. It is in many ways, standing in front of stage in front of people, or walking into a room at an event. It's scary to be seen. And I would encourage any friend that you have to say, you do it and do it afraid. Now, Christians may say, no, spirit of fear. No. What I'm saying is, you're being bold enough to step into these unknowns and face that. And so I would say for friends, I would empower them, but also have an honest conversation to say, if you want to get better and you know you need this, you might as well just dive in. And it's better to dive in and then say, this is a lot, than retreat. But if you don't know, I don't think you should stop the opportunity. So it's empowering, but also having a conversation and saying, what is triggering you about this?
But now I'm not a counselor to start understanding Triggers.
What I'm saying, okay, I guess what I say with that is having that soft launch of what is scary to you about this. And when they say that, say, okay, I think this is a place to bring that to your counselor.
Yeah.
If that's the first thing you say, I'm scared. Let's dig in that. Let's like see what's underneath all of that.
Maybe that's an opportunity to practice some of the things you have learned through your therapy sessions about community.
Jalipwa.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but therapy, man. I feel like you're tagging me in that, and I'm like one of those friends who.
She's over here like, is it me?
Yeah,
What's
like, is it
happening?
me? Am I the problem?
Low-key, maybe.
Am I the drama?
No, I did one therapy session and then I have not done it again. I need to go back. I started the year strong. I need to go back, but it is necessary. And I think the notion that you only do therapy when you actually have issues,
Yeah.
it is such a false narrative
Very.
within, especially the Black community and the African Americans and Kenyans, that you only go see somebody when you actually have issues. And I don't think that's true, because there are things, as you said, even that one session with the therapist, I was crying and she was asking me questions about my childhood, and I was explaining, and I was like, wait, I never even thought that affected me. I never thought my relationship with so and so ever, or what, I never connected the two.
Yeah.
And so you really don't think you have issues, but once you start to deep diving, it's that thing, the things that you suppressed.
Yes, they overflow.
Consciously or subconsciously, they start coming out.
Yeah.
Is there a way? What can we do to? Because there's a lot of mental health issues happening within our community, right? How do we proposition therapy as a resource, and what are other resources that are available that people can utilize when they're having some of these issues?
I would definitely say, number one, the internet, and people may say there's a lot out there, but sometimes a YouTube video, right? If you want to name an emotion, okay, what emotions are there? Let's start there. What is anger? What is anxiety? What is fear? What is all of this? And, you know, what people don't know is anger is actually rooted in fear. What? It really is. Because you're so afraid of either it's an area of control or an area of losing something. So that fear becomes internalized, and you just become frustrated.
I'll have to sleep on that one.
Yeah.
I remember there's a therapist, a counselor, who gave us that wheel of emotions.
Yes.
That thing, like, whatever you think you feel is rooted in, like, so many other things. So, yeah, I can see that.
Uncontrolled excitement, like it's rooted in anxiety, and some people may think anxiety is a negative thing, but sometimes it's positive because you're just waiting, you're anticipating. But how do you regulate that? How do you regulate that excitement so you're not like hey all over the place?
Yeah.
You know, which is why you can't sleep when you have a big trip. It's excitement rooted in anxiety. Am I gonna miss my flight? What is happening? But it's not negative. You're excited. You know, so I would say the feeling wheel would be that. Thank you for bringing that up. And just 101 videos. You know, what is depression 101? What is anxiety 101? Learning. I think when you learn names and you can name things, then you may be able to champion your health when you go see someone and say, these are my symptoms, and I think they may lead to major depressive disorder or maybe mild anxiety. Oh. So then you have a conversation. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead.
Googling counselors in your area, and the good thing is counselors will go into detail as to who they specialize. If it's teens, if it's you're dealing with trauma or crisis intervention, they're very specific. Yeah.
Would you recommend in-person therapy or online? Like, what is your take on like all these online therapy?
I like them.
Okay.
I say that because COVID really highlighted, number one, it lets the person feel comfortable. That's a good way to tell your friend as well who's scared to start. Maybe it's saying, hey, you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
Jerry's like, we must
But in person, I know some people need that. I need to see you.
Connection,
Yeah.
I need to leave the room. I need a neutral space. So it's 50-50. I like the online because, number one, I like to be mobile and remote and move, but also touch base with somebody and have a positive interaction.
I like that. The session that I'm saying that I did was online, but it got to a point where the internet connection was just so bad, and I'm just like
That
talking
one.
to my. I was like, I want in person. I want to go in person and sit down with somebody. That is if it's possible, but it's good to know that those resources are there, even if it's something online. And I think even the pricing for it is
Yeah.
favorable.
Yeah.
It's favorable. And as Jerry always says, it's an investment into you. It's you're investing into your health.
To your health. And
Yeah.
some entrances, depending on the plan, they'll probably give you 5 free sessions and then you go on. But you really have to do the research there. But there are those options too.
Yeah.
Do you think the word therapy should be rebranded?
It's a good one.
Sorry, it wasn't part of the questions we sent.
Wow. I know. Y'all should do a still shot. Like, no. I think, well, when you say rebranded, I think it should be in terms of how we talk about it. But in terms of the term, no. I think it's all about perception, and we talk about it in the counseling field. Perception is a reality. So if I perceive therapy to be bad, my reality of anybody going to therapy or anything that has to do with emotions will be negative. So I think it's changing the perspective and how the emotion that comes up when people hear therapy. Because if people don't have that resolved conflict, or maybe they know their upbringing was so dysfunctional that the thought of therapy and the thought of unpacking that is so much that it's like, I don't like that word. So it just really depends on the person receiving prospectively what that means. And I think, to answer your question in short, it's changing how we talk about it.
Okay.
To be a productive tool rather than a judgmental tool
Yeah.
or word. You need therapy.
Because in
I
our
do.
community, it's like if you're in therapy, they start looking at you, guys, you have issues.
Actually, do I mental?
That one, oh my god.
I'm like, mental health. I do I mental. I'm like,
The people of
God.
mental.
It's like, no, but that's what they know.
Yeah. And I'm getting to a place of kind of understand, not kind of, actually understanding majority of people who don't have that grasp. It's because of they also grew up that way.
They don't know.
They don't know. And I think going back to that episode of Love, something that Dr. Solomon said was a growing child needs a growing parent.
Yes.
Because we're being raised by, and I'm not knocking our parents at all, but there were no such
No.
Resources, or like, oh, let me just go to therapy just for my to understand my upbringing, to
Let me
understand
Google
why
what that
Let me
means,
Google.
where.
They didn't have that. And now they're in a place, because all they were taught is that let's pray, go to church, tuombe, let's pray.
Jesus is the answer.
Is the answer
Exactly.
to everything, And so now when they're raising their kids, it's like there's that disconnect.
I survived, so you can.
Exactly. Like we went through it, we didn't have issues, we didn't have all the, but it's rooted. Like even if you really look through a lens of your parenting method, or even how you respond to certain things, like even at work and stuff like that, it's really rooted in fear because of how you were brought up. So we all need to understand that we need a form of therapy, even if it's like us having conversations like this that enlighten us to understand. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to have those conversations that help me really unravel how my upbringing is affecting me as a parent and in my career, whatever, all that stuff. So giving each other grace as kids, giving our parents grace, knowing that they raised us the best way they knew how, with whatever resources they had. So there's also an aspect where kids are really expecting their parents to be like angels and to really be perfect in how they're doing it and how they're parenting them and how they're talking to them, but it's not possible. They are not angels. They're Mary and Joseph. That's who they are, you know? So giving them that grace, but also all of us understanding that we are all learning and we are all growing, and we need to have these conversations. We need to talk about it, and not from a judgmental place, but from a place of openness. I'm willing to listen and understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
Man.
Professor P. How can we make our parents culturally sensitive to the fact that yes, they've come from Kenya, sasa wako Majuu, now they have children's here, and they expect them to understand a culture that they've never lived in.
Cultural sensitivity is key. I think as much as parents have learned the American culture in their own way, because you're showing up to work, you're paying your bills, you're doing all of these things that required you to adjust to this culture. The same grace you gave yourself, whether it was in survival mode, let's just be honest, thank you parents for that, because you probably weren't given that space to adjust. So thank you for that. And raising us in a fast moving culture as you were trying to get the ropes. But when you reach that place and other people may have shown you grace and taught you things that you didn't know along the way, that's what your children, that's what they need. And I think when I say giving them grace, it's if you can't answer the question, it's finding people that can. And being okay to be in that room as those questions are being answered, or following up when they're answered. And another thing is, if you want your children to be proudly Kenyan, you will need to showcase the Kenyan culture to them, not just through events where when they're sitting on their own with the kids, and because they don't know how to connect. It will require you to, and I know finances, we can't speak for everybody and say they can do this, but if it's traveling to Kenya, if that allows you financially, you know, looking at papers and all of those things, but how do you still meet them halfway to really immerse them in the Kenyan culture? Is it through videos? Is it through history lessons? But if this is the expectation, there has to be that 50-50. And I will say, when I came here, I was 6 going on 7. And my father began to teach us about the American culture when we were in Kenya. That's a tip I would probably give, is he started showing us who's the president right now, or what are hot topics that are taking place. This is a playground. I'd never seen a playground, and that way when I showed up, I wasn't like, that's us, you know, trying to climb the slide backwards. But he practically, because he came here before us, so he was able to see, this is what my kids are going to need. And we spoke English back home. And then when we moved here, we spoke Kikuyu and Swahili at home. So he flipped us. It was confusing. It sounds easy, but imagine you're getting like chapwat because you're speaking Kikuyu in Kenya. But he's like, no, because if I don't train your mind right now, you will have a hard time adjusting. So yeah, it was a process. But
that's interesting.
I think that's what parents should do, is increase your cultural sensitivity. And I understand we're not Americans, we're not Jimmy next door, but how do you understand what your kids are going through when they're in school from 8 to 5? Their friends are Americans, right?
They're in school longer than they're with you.
Exactly.
School is a scam.
That part gives me that part gives me anxiety. Like when you may have to do private school. Hey, I've thought about homeschooling, but I'm like, nah. We get kids so they can go into the world. So I can't just like, you know, shelter him. But like the anxiety of, am I like, I want to know everything. I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. I want, you know, like, am I putting him in the right spaces? Am I having the right conversations? Like, you know, that kind of anxiety. It's not me, but it's about being armed with knowledge. It's easier for you to get through when you have knowledge.
Exactly.
So,
and naming, language.
Putting a name onto
giving things language, emotions, feelings, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. My goodness, that was a very enlightening conversation.
And deep. So then you have to come back up for air.
You guys. No, Majuu Mates, if you weren't writing notes, rewind.
And start again.
Yes, and
Right.
if you haven't done the thing, please, we have brought you how many doctors this month?
Click, click.
Yeah? Do the thing.
I know
Do the thing.
this
Yes.
month has been very fruitful. Like I feel so much fed personally, and I hope you guys have been learning a lot. Like Black History Month, keep it going. But what I wanted to say was, if you are experiencing any issues at all, I think there's toll numbers to call as well.
Yes. So there is the suicide crisis line. You can go on to the state of Texas, Google them and go to the department there, and you can Google the 24/7 counseling line, and also just counselors in your area that are 24/7, MHMR as well. If you're in the Dallas community, they have offices in Denton all the way to Fort Worth and Dallas. They have a crisis response team. They can even navigate you to online counselors or hotlines.
Yeah.
Are these free?
The crisis lines, yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
So, but you're calling when, I mean, yes, you don't want to say that you're in a crisis, but even if you're not, call. I like to tell people that, yes, it's crisis, but I think it's good to call and say, hey, I just need a navigator. I need somebody to navigate me because I need to get help right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's so key to note, because there's a lot of people, because you're trying to call your friends and maybe wamechoka na wewe, but they're tired of picking up your phone calls. So at least once you call that line,
Then you can have somebody, 24/7 counselors that are trained to just talk things through with you.
absolutely.
24/7.
Yes.
No sleep.
2 in the
Yes.
morning, call them. We'll put
Seriously.
the numbers in the description so that you don't have an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. They will be in the description box. So I think what I'm getting is, we don't really have an excuse.
No.
We don't.
We have a lot of resources that are exposure, especially if you're an adult who is working and all that stuff. I think it's an investment into your health.
Right.
The same way you religiously buy that cup of coffee from Starbucks to feed your soul. I think we can make an investment. And I'm tagging myself. We can definitely make an
Double
investment.
click.
Yes, it's true.
So please do let us know, by the way. I know Priscilla is very big on connecting people,
Yes.
and providing resources. I know that's something true with you. So if you have any questions at all, if you need to be connected to a counselor, you don't know where to start, please do reach out to Priscilla. This is her Instagram handle. I don't know about giving out your information.
Sure. Or are you gonna put it right here when we say it?
Yeah, we'll give you we'll put your whatever
this is
contact information that is you okay. If it's an email,
Oh yes.
yes, we'll offer all that so that you can reach out to her and ask her any questions that you want about mental
Please.
health. Yes,
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even me, I want an email on majuudiairies
Right
at
here.
gmail.com. Guys,
Menyamaza sana.
Menyamaza
Yeah,
sana.
yeah,
I don't know what a
quiet.
problem is. We're bringing quality content.
I know.
But you
Know
know
yourselves.
Ni sawa, guys. No, but thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming. Thank you for wrapping us up this February. Thank you for opening our minds and just learning so much about mental health. Truly, asante.
Thank you.
Because mental health
Karibu.
the mind is such a powerful tool.
Very.
And if we don't take care of it, I know last week we talked about taking care of our body, but this one here, it controls everything
It really
else.
does.
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
So
Yeah.
And there are layers to it.
So
So
many. I feel like we've just really touched
Kijuju too.
Kijuju too.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have a time limit here, but please, if you want us to deep dive into this, please let us know. Priscilla will be back. Tunamsamea, we have
Yes.
told you.
hear that?
Evelyn told her. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode. As Jerry said, if you have not yet done the thing, please do the thing. Interact with us on our social media handles, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.